Hi, it's Betty Plus Books, and today I'm going to be talking about 5 reading habits that I've mostly quit. I noticed over the last few years that those things were really diminishing my reading experience, making me enjoy it less, and in some cases, making me read less. The first habit that was a bad habit for me that I've quit is speed reading or listening to audiobooks on triple speed. I'm sure some people are great speed readers and they can absorb everything that they read with great clarity, they can remember everything. I am not that kind of person. If I try to speed read, I am skimming and I might remember the main character's name, a major plot point that I might have slowed down for, but overall, I won't absorb the book as much and I won't enjoy it as much. I used to try to speed read a lot when I was really focused on trying to keep the number of books that I read per year up, and I don't really know why I was doing that because at the time I wasn't on BookTube, so I wasn't really having to read things quickly so that I could share my reviews about them. I also didn't really have any friends who cared at all how much I read or how many books I read per year, or if they did, they looked at me when I said I read over 200 books in a particular year and went, "Are you okay?" The answer was no, but that's a story for a different time. Similarly, when I was listening to audiobooks, I eventually trained myself to technically be able to understand what they were saying at triple speed, but again, I wasn't really absorbing it, and that experience was not one I enjoyed as much as just gradually going through a book. Speaking of audiobooks, my second bad habit that I've mostly quit is listening to audiobooks without really listening to them. I used to work in software, and during that, I would often try to listen to audiobooks while doing programming. I thought that this would be a great way to do my work and keep myself entertained. Really, it just made it so that I wasn't really fully paying attention to either thing. I think coding used more of my linguistic centers than I really realized, and there is a reason why they call it a programming language. And so trying to absorb what was happening in the book and also generate code wasn't really working, and it was slowing me down a lot. Another less detrimental way this happened was when I was listening to an audiobook and just kind of like browsing through articles or something on my phone. It's pretty obvious when you think about trying to read 2 things at once or listen to 2 things at once that you're not going to get the full story with each. But for some reason, my brain didn't think, hey, this probably applies to even if you're crossing between the reading and writing barriers. If I'm not entertained enough by the audiobook, I can do something else while doing it. It just can't be reading anything. And one that I'm having a really hard time getting over is that I can't really listen to an audiobook while trying to fall asleep, which I hate because the audiobook just kind of drowns out all the thoughts and all the anxiety. But then I don't remember what happened in the audiobook, but what I'm thinking of replacing that with instead when I do need help falling asleep is the LeVar Burton Reads podcast, because he has such a soothing voice, and that will give me the benefit of having something to drown out those anxious thoughts so that I can fall asleep, while also not being part of a book that I'm trying to actively focus on and remember and really deeply understand. They're short enough where I can be like, hey, that story I was listening to last night sounded really interesting, but then I passed out, so maybe I actually want to go listen to that again. But if I don't go back and I just listen to the next story, it's not a big deal. So that really leaves the only places that I can listen to an audiobook are while I'm driving, while I'm cooking, or while I'm cleaning. So those are things where I'm not using my linguistic centers. Oh, or when I'm exercising. That sometimes works too. I do have to pause my audiobooks when I'm cooking and something loud is happening, or when I'm cooking and I have to read the recipe. And I almost never remember to do that. So maybe I'll miss a little bit here and there, but it's much better than trying to do it while reading the internet, which is just pointless. The third bad habit that I've quit that I used to have a really hard time with is that I no longer buy every single book that I think I might be interested in reading. It used to be that if one of the YouTubers whose personality I really liked recommended a book, I would just go buy it, like right away, like that day. Which is interesting because a lot of those YouTubers didn't actually have similar book taste to me. I just liked their personality. They definitely sold me on some books that didn't really like too much. Or I would use book shopping as entertainment. I would just, on my lunch break from work, go to the bookstore, browse around a bit, and leave the store with like $100 stack of books and then not read them for a few years. It is the kind of impulse buying that I love the best, but after a while I just had all these books on my shelf that I wasn't getting to fast enough. And so they were just taunting me and I felt like I had to read them, but I didn't really want to anymore, but I spent $20 on them, so Some things that helped me with this are that I made a specific set of criteria under which conditions I would buy a certain book And another one was just that we were trying really hard to save money for a goal that we really wanted to achieve financially. And it was so much easier to say, I'm not going to buy this $20 book when that correlated to, I don't want to have to work another couple of hours in order to make the money to buy this book and then also reach the financial goal that we're going toward. But that habit wasn't serving me, and it was adding a lot of guilt to my reading that I just did not need. The fourth bad habit that I've quit is refusing to DNF books that I hate. I really admire people who finish every book they start and they retain all of that information so that they can really give a cohesive view of why they hated it. But if I hate a book, I don't know what happened at the end. Don't ask me. I'm gonna have to talk some time about the book that made me change my mind on that. Part of what helped this was the fact that I wasn't buying every book that I was interested in reading, meant that I didn't have as many books that I had spent so much money on. So then I had that sunk cost fallacy of, I already spent $10, $20 on this book, I have to read it, I have to finish it, or I'm going to have wasted that money, because I wasted that money anyway. It's easier to finish something if you're just like, I took it out from the library, I read the first chapter, it was garbage, I brought it back. The last thing I've stopped doing is I've stopped taking reading challenges too seriously. So while I was still on Goodreads instead of Storygraph, I participated in the Nothing But Reading Challenges group, and I got so into some of the reading challenges. In the team challenges, I would get really wrapped up in the scores and trying to get my team up to the next level. I always wanted my team to be first place. I kind of just tried to sacrifice myself and read for the prompts that were really hard or that no one else wanted to read for. And I read some books that I absolutely hated. So I've had to kind of scale back, and I think getting out of Goodreads helped as well, because I can still do reading challenges, but for the most part, they're independent reading challenges, and there are no points, there's no teams. I can be more objective when I look at a reading challenge and say, are the prompts here actually something that's going to help me pick books I like? Are these prompts something that are going to slow me down and make me read books I hate? Also, some of the prompts for these challenges were so specific that I would spend more time trying to find a book that fit that prompt, seeking out the niche book that satisfied that to read it, and spending money on that book to read it if the library didn't have it. I actually spent less time reading than I spent doing the research to try and find books to read for those challenges, which just seems really silly to me, especially since after a while that just stressed me out and I wasn't enjoying the process of reading, and I wasn't enjoying the process of looking for the books to read. So what was I doing? Overall, I think that's still a really great community, and it can be helpful to help you try and read more or try and read in a more interactive way with other people. But reading the wrong challenges and then taking them too seriously was really doing me a disservice with my reading. So those are 5 bad book habits that I've managed to quit, but I'm curious about your bad habits. Do you have any bad reading habits that you're still trying to quit? Are some of these really good reading habits to you? I'd love to hear of someone who's a speed reader and absolutely loves it, or I want to hear if you're one of those people that's really good at reading those books you hate and doing the hate reading thing and being able to give a really cohesive assessment of why you hate it. Or maybe you find that taking reading challenges seriously more helps you get outside your comfort zone and push your reading more, but not in a destructive way. I'd love to hear it. Tell me down in the comments. I put out videos every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. So until next time, happy reading!